Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Kurt Witcher. I'm manager of the Genealogy Center here at the Allen County Public Library in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Today's topic is telling the stories of our lives. I'm going to turn off my video in just a moment and share screen with you, and we can walk through my presentation. I hope it does a couple of things. One, I hope it makes you feel more comfortable about sharing your family stories. Two, I hope it takes down any subliminal or conscious barriers you have to writing or recording your history. Now, it may appear at first to be a little kind of scrambling presentation because I'm all over the place a little bit, and that's intentional. Not that it's scrambling, but I want to fill your mind with possibilities. You don't have to do them all. In fact, you don't have to do any of them, but I sure hope you'll pick one or two to focus on because I think there can be almost nothing more important after finding our family stories than presenting them. I will share with you some things I've shared with you in the past. I'll share with you some new things. I'll share with you some personal things. Again, you don't have to embrace all of it. I just would like all of us to think more carefully and more clearly about what we are doing to tell the stories of our lives, right? So I'm going to share my screen again and pick up the PowerPoint presentation, and we'll see if we can get that on your screens, and it should be on your screens right now. And I will turn off my monitor, my video, and we'll move from there. So here we are, telling the stories of our lives, writing, recording, sharing. Those three action words, those three concepts, I think are of great consequence to us. I know my view is probably a little parochial. I'll totally own that. But having the privilege, the honor to work with a wonderful team of colleagues in presenting as much genealogical data, as many records, as many images as we possibly can to our patrons, to our customers, so they have a better chance, a better shot at doing, finding, presenting their family stories. I see every day how many of us aren't doing our best. We're not doing our best in writing, recording, and sharing. And beyond the fact that I think it's just generally a shame, we aren't advantaging our descendants, our relatives. We aren't advantaging them with the stories that we've found and the records that we've found. So spend some time with me just thinking about what we might be able to do better. So finding our family stories is an awesome thing. Why do I state kind of the obvious? Because I think sometimes we really need to embrace that as a motivational factor. What we're doing, as they would say in the business world, is, quote, big, important work. And you've heard me say that before. Yes, we have fun doing it. Yes, we really enjoy sharing, but this is really big, important work, finding our family stories. We know now in recent years that our children and grandchildren, knowing their family stories makes them better human beings. They excel better in school. They test higher in school. They make friends easier. They handle change and diversity easier. They lead more companies. They start more companies. They are more content, more willing to challenge and question, and just better at being fully human, fully alive. I've asked this question many times as well. Why wouldn't we want that for our children and our grandchildren? So, doing genealogical research, finding our family stories is an awesome thing. And it's a really awesome thing because we now know in recent years, with the wonderful work that VividPix has done, with our partnership with VividPix, with the partnership with the National Institute for Dementia Studies, we now know that individuals on the more mature side of life who are on the dementia spectrum, they too benefit from us knowing and sharing our stories. particularly in marrying those stories to images, to photographs, to pictures. So it's not just only a fun and fulfilling thing for us as individuals. It's meaningful and consequential to our descendants and to our family members. So on both ends of the life spectrum, our ability to share what many of us have spent a lifetime doing is of huge consequence. We are doing really awesome things. Now, who wouldn't want to embrace engaging and doing really awesome things, right? I can't think of anyone who would. So I hope that sets like a good frame of mind for us to think about what we can more actively do. And for some of us, I might even say for many of us, might do for the first time, right? Doing and finding our family stories and sharing those family stories. Well, finding it is the awesome thing, but sharing our family stories tops all of that. If we find a treasure, if we create a treasure and don't share that, um, in a way, what's the point? We're just hoping against hope, perhaps, that someone will just magically discover, they'll trip upon it long after we're gone and find it meaningful and relevant and bring it back to life. So doing and finding our family stories, it's a big deal. Sharing our family stories tops all of that. It's an even bigger deal. And reality, I just have to share reality with you. Some might say this is kind of negative. I don't see it as negative. I just see it as reality. Okay. So we know sharing our family stories tops everything. Yet, most of our stories are not written or told. That last phrase, I want to say slowly because it's intentional. They're not written or told, they're bundled up for never. I think a lot of us think if we keep it in the right file cabinet, if we put it in archival boxes, if we had it in fireproof storage, and some really cool things that are on our safety deposit box, they'll be around forever. I have some increasing amount of evidence that that's not true at all. That safety deposit box will be opened by a disinterested family member, right? Our house, our domicile, when our grandkids or distant family members come to clean it out after our demise. Our bundles of information aren't bundled up forever. They're bundled up for never because it's not written up, as we've mentioned a couple times earlier this month in Wednesdays with Witcher, not well organized, really not very shareable. So we know how important this is, and yet most of our data, most of the documents and evidence that we have for finding and having found our family stories is saved for never because we haven't written it and we haven't recorded it. We really should. In the waning days of 2024, there's less than 70 days left this year. We should really make a commitment to change that. We should bundle things, write stories, record stories forever, not for never. Living memory, I've talked about this a number of times in the past, and so have my colleagues. We walk around with a library in our minds. Our brains are a library of our experiences, hearing people talk about our family, viewing documents, sharing research with other relatives. Our living memory is precious and it's all ours. Like no one can get inside our brains and write or record the material for us. It's all ours, and I put there in every way, meaning whether it is preserved and passed along forever is totally up to us, whether we write or record it. We kind of need to do what people call a brain dump. We need to continually look at brain dumping what we know about our family that we learned at anniversaries, at class reunions, at birthday parties, at funerals, all those life events, or just casually spending time with someone on Facebook or emailing and texting back and forth. Our brains as family history libraries continue to add material all the time. That's our living memory. When we're gone, whatever isn't recorded, isn't written, is gone as well. So living memory is precious and it's all ours. It's all on us, totally. A number of times this month, and I just had to do it one final time. Are we, as genealogists, as family historians, are we telling our families stories, or are we just gathering stuff? There's a great amount of evidence to say that, yeah, a good number of us are just gathering stuff. Let's tip that scale the other way. Let's tell our family stories. I'm going to be presenting a lot of suggestions. Again, don't be overwhelmed. Again, no test at the end of this. You won't have to recite this. Just see if anything strikes you as possibly something you could embrace that would be kind of suitable to your lifestyle, suitable to how you like to spend early day hours, late day hours, middle day hours. How can you, this is the big question, how can you make it convenient and comfortable for you to record audioly or in writing your family stories? Because if it's not enjoyable, if we put a big barrier in front, we're not going to do it. We're just not going to do it. Make a plan today to tell your story. I could have probably put this up as the first slide, and it could also be the last slide, and we could end there. That's what we need to do. We need to make a plan today to tell our stories, tell your story. How do we do that? First general statement is you can write it or record it. So you can key it up, or you can talk into a recorder, a digital recorder, your smart device. Don't languish. You can go back and forth too. Maybe I should have put you can write it and or record it, but you need to do it. And today is almost too late to start, if you get my gist. We need to write it or record it. So I'm going to entice you to embrace some options. I've said this for a long time, so have my colleagues. Write up your research. A lot of professionals say this too. It's not good enough to do research. Write up your research. Almost like write up your research as a research report, like you would have to turn this in. I don't like to say that, and I just said it, right? So pardon me for doing that, because when we think report, what do we think? We think school, we think graded, we think conforming to really rigid rules about sentence structure and paragraph length and noun plurality agreement, singular plural agreement. Nah, that's not what I mean. But we should, when we do research, write about that research. I have said for many years, it's not been embraced, but I continue to say it. For every 1 hour of research you do, you should have 10 minutes additional for writing up that research. And since it's not embraced, I'm going to offer like a compromise to all of you who are with me this afternoon. How about if I compromise and say, for every hour of research, you only need to do 5 minutes of writing? Would that help you do it? It's not good enough to find the immigration record. It's not good enough to find the translation of an old letter. Write what that record means as far as your family story. Write what's in that letter and why that's of consequence to you. It is very important for us to write up our research. Look at a document or image and ask these two questions. What is it telling me? What is it not telling me? And you might say, Kurt, why is that match, that lit match on the screen? I just want to tell you a quick story. When I was in 8th grade chemistry, I failed this assignment, by the way, because I just didn't have a creative mind. And I think that many of us, in many places in our lives, we may not have creative minds either. And that's okay. We recognize it and we fix it, right? We recognize it and we modify and compromise for it. So the 8th grade chemistry, it's actually a chemistry class. We were supposed to write 50 observations of fire from a Bunsen burner or fire from a match. I'm thinking to myself, so I was looking at the Bunsen burner. My classmate had a match and she just kept striking matches. Like it was her goal to like light all the matches that were in the box. It's like, okay, it's consuming the matchstick. It's yellow. it's hot, it's a little smoke, that's less than 10. How how can I get to 50? And again, Kurt wasn't being very creative. If you look at the flame quickly, it's not yellow. There's there's some orange, there's some brown color in there. Flame doesn't stay static, it moves around. What influences the moving? I'm going to stop there because we're not doing chemistry today, right? But those are the kinds of things we should ask ourselves when we find a family member or potential family member, ancestor or potential ancestor in a document. Why was this document created? What is each column, each category, each mark by my ancestor's name mean? Who are the people around it? You know, the whole fans thing again, friends, associates, and neighbors, the whole thing around that. What does that mean? So it's really of great consequence for us to take a good hard look. That helps us write up our research. So we're not just going to say, found them on an 1891 passenger list. Well, which passenger list? What's the ship? Where was it coming from? Where did it land? Who are the passengers? It's amazing what we can do, and that helps us write up our research. It also helps create a fuller story, and we do better research that way. So here comes some strategies. So there'll be about 4 bullet points here, what I call a writing state of mind. And I think we really need to take writing out of the onerous and hard category that probably most of us felt during our formal educational years. I think we need to kind of flip the script on that now, right? We need to flip the script on writing being work, hard, onerous. First, to get in a writing state of mind, read all the time and everything, not just your Facebook, not just what's pushed to you on social. That too, but read a book, whether it's an ebook, whether it's Overdrive, whether it's a paper book, read all the time. Why? Because when you're reading, your mind is considering the circumstances that your eyes are seeing. Oh, this was set in a meadow. And our minds, without any real assistance from us, are trying to make connections all the time. So what will happen when you're reading? And it can be a Stephen King, horror novel. It can be some biography. It can be historical fiction. It can be science fiction. Our minds are always trying to make connections, and the connections tend to be around, like, does this remind me of anything? What's the context for this? So read all the time, listen to stories. NPR, StoryCorps, just listen to stories. Again, your mind will begin to say, that reminds me of. Do things in your life that plant and nourish that writing prompt. Oh, that reminds me of. We do it when we look at photographs. I can't tell you how many times people will pick something out of a photograph. Sometimes the main feature, if you will, of the photograph, sometimes just a little sidebar like a tree or an automobile or a sign in the background. And they'll say something akin to, that's a Texaco sign. My father used to work at a Texaco station, or I remember having my car die on the highway and I pushed it to the nearby Texaco station. All kinds of reasons. Our minds are trying to make connections. So to get in a writing state of mind, read, listen to stories, because we want to nourish in our mind that writing prompt of, oh, that reminds me of. If you are more intentional about it, it will come up much more often than we even realize. And then commit to writing every day. And I know there might be some of you saying right now, you've got to be kidding me, Witcher. I'm going to write every day. My life is so busy. I've got kids, I got grandkids. Work is just a bear. I enjoy my job, but it consumes 18 hours out of my 24-hour day. I got way better things to do. I want to spend all my time with the grandkids. We can come up with all kinds of, and pardon the use of the word, we can come up with all kinds of excuses not to write, not to record our stories. The challenge, the trick is finding reasons why you want to do it. You can find excuses not to do it. Find reasons why you want to do it. You don't have to carve out an hour. You don't have to write, something as long as War and Peace. You don't have to record it perfectly. We'll talk to that in just a moment, but just a simple statement or two. And it can be any time or it can be an intentional time. You know how you're wired. You know what works best for you. So embrace that. Do that, right? I felt compelled to put the slide in here. Free yourself. Be free. You're not in school anymore. You're not going to be graded on this. I know this might be heresy, and I know there will be some that will disagree with me, but I think I articulated at the top of the hour, this is my advice. So it's take it or leave it. And I don't mean that in any kind of, forward, affrontive way. But I think there's something for us to think about here. You're not in school anymore. You're not going to be graded. Forget about grammar. Forget about spelling. If you want to write, I ain't got none, that's perfectly fine. I use double negatives for effect all the time. I tell people, you can't not do that. That's a double negative. That's technically incorrect grammar. You don't have to write anything totally or completely. It's like, yeah, I'd like to talk about, the first time that I really felt that my young child enjoyed me thoroughly, enjoyed going to the grocery store with me. All right. I really want to record the first birthday of my child. And it's like, but I have so much I want to record. I'm going to wait until I have the perfect time and the perfect time of day and everything is out of my mind and everything is still and everything is peaceful. Well, guess what? You're never going to write about it. That's what's going to happen. You're never going to write about it. I know there are some people who want to record their family story or an individual story or the story of an event in order, like from the beginning of the day to the end of the day, from birth to death, from, planting the seed to harvesting the crop. You don't have to do that. You can pick any time you want to in any person's life, in any event scenario. Again, there are no rules. The only thing that's wrong, pardon the pun here, is for you not to write, for you not to record. That's what's wrong. How you do it, free yourself. You might enjoy, and your family members and your descendants might enjoy a less formal you. Telling your emotions, your thoughts, your ideas in your words, not in my words, not in Webster Dictionary's words, not in perfect King's English words, but your words. So you don't have to use proper grammar. And it's really okay to be you, right? It's okay for you to be you. If we just free ourselves from all the things we learned in school, all the things where we were graded poorly on because the spelling wasn't right, singular noun, singular plural agreement wasn't right, noun verb agreement wasn't right. And it's like, oh my gosh, I failed. I'm never going to write again. No, you will get an A on everything that you write on your family story if you want to be concerned about grading. When we are recording or writing, engage your senses. Put yourself in a place where at least one of your senses can be engaged. Sight, sound, smell, touch, and taste. Why is smell in red? Our olfactory nerve, our noses, our sense of smell, that is the most powerful memory trigger. So you want to advantage yourself by capitalizing on that. So if you like the way coffee smells, your writing will flow more freely. You'll be more inspired if you smell coffee, if you're in a kitchen after breakfast or lunch or dinner has been made. Why do we think so many conversations happen around holiday tables? Because you see people's faces, you see the wonderful food, you hear the conversation, and in red in the center there, you smell that and it brings back memories. I don't think there's a person here who hasn't noticed and evidence that at a holiday gathering, whether you're cooking a turkey or some other holiday dish, a casserole, 3-bean salad, 5-bean salad, whatever your family tradition is, when we smell that, We remember other times where we were together. We remember other meals. So engage your senses. Don't just sit in a sterile room with no pictures, no window, no sound. Engage your senses. If you're going to start writing about a particular person and you do have a block of time more than 3 minutes, why don't you just bring out a picture of them, bring it up on your smartphone? Like, let your senses work for you. Why not advantage your senses? Those 5 things, really important. Can you hold the flag that an ancestor got at his or her military burial? Can you put a piece of candy in your mouth? Can you taste a really warm, wonderfully flavored cup of coffee? Can you hear early morning sounds that remind you of days when you were growing up? Engage your senses. That will help you record and write. I'm going to tell just a couple quick stories. Many of you have heard me tell these before, but this is just a different twist on this. So my mom, God bless her, many talents. Cooking was not one of them. So like maybe 4 things that she could cook well. And again, not meaning to disparage her in any way, but she cooked what she called chili. Now, when I say the word chili, I know most everyone has a different version of chili, right? A far, far different version of chili. My mom's chili was kidney beans, tomato-based broth, diced potatoes, and whatever other vegetable was almost rotting in the refrigerator that could be cut up and put into the chili, right? The chili. No hot, no spices, no nothing. But whenever I hear chili, whenever I smell any flavor, variety, type of chili, I always think back to my mom calling this soup chili. And it was very good, but it's a way different kind of chili. So my olfactory, when I smell anybody's any kind of chili, my mind flips back to that. I frequent uh, donut places, not very often because my doctor gets mad at me, and it's really not good for my health to be frequenting donut places. But I have to tell you, whenever I smell a yeast donut, and those of you who know donuts know there's different smells for different types of donuts. Whenever I smell a yeast donut, my mind always goes back to the very few times that my paternal grandmother would come visit us. We wouldn't see her very often at all, even though she just lived on the other end of the state. My parents didn't like to travel with us kids, and they didn't really like hanging around with their family. It is what it is. But whenever Grandma Witcher would come up, my mom would get so aggravated with her because she would mess up my mom's kitchen by making yeast donuts from scratch. And the piece de resistance was letting us kids put powder sugar on them. Of course, kids, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old kids are really neat about putting powder sugar on things. Well, there was powder sugar everywhere. So I can use smell again to bring back a memory. If we kind of open our minds to that possibility, it's amazing what you will have available to you to write, correct? So the next 2 slides, I really want you to consider doing at least 1 or 2 of these fairly regularly until it becomes a habit that you don't need to think about. If you have a photograph album, and I'm saying that with the big smile on my face that you can't see, because I'm sure everyone has at least several photograph albums, either actual physical ones and or virtual ones. Make a commitment to write through that album. Does that mean this afternoon carve 3, 4, 5 hours? No. Just methodically, comfortably, easily, as you have time, write through the photograph album. What do I mean by write through it? Stop at every page, look at every picture, and see if you can't write just a couple words about it. Keep your mind open to maybe a couple words ends up being a couple paragraphs. That's cool. That's okay. But work your way through the photograph album. Write or key your way through the photograph album. Or pick up a recorder, your smart device, and talk your way through the photo album. Tell what you're seeing, what you remember, what feeling that evokes. Do the same thing with any scrapbook that you have. A scrapbook from maybe your grandchild's first grade class. And you might think, Kurt, that's ridiculous. There's no family history in there. There's no nothing in there that is relevant to our family story. Well, I'm going to push back a little bit on that because it was your grandchild that did that scrapbook, right? Go through that scrapbook and intentionally look at every image, every drawing, every pasted in anything, and see if it evokes a thought in your mind. Does it remind you of when you did that? Does it remind you of when your grandchild told you about doing that? Does it remind you about anything about your grandchild or any other family member or about yourself or about your younger life? The third bullet point there is a favorite of mine. I have a real recent event to share with you if I can get through it, and also a legacy one. Write around a word. Pick a word, any word. So the two words we're going to show in just a moment are ritual and tears. So write around a word. Pick a word that's invaded your day or been invited into your day. Happy, anniversary, party. Pick any word you want to and write around that word. Loss, celebration, triumph, fear, any word you want to. Merry-go-round, race car, write around that word. It's kind of fun and it gets you thinking. And the more you think, your mind recalls, because your mind wants to connect the dots, wants to bring things forward. Compile a family history of a couple generations of one line. Don't do the whole thing. Don't get it back to Adam. Don't try to find your immigrant ancestor all in an afternoon, but take the information. If we've done the writing up of our research, take the information that you have and just weave it together into a family history. A person I consider a really good friend, who's president of our local Jewish Genealogical Society. She's been doing this for her children for years. It's a beautiful gift, absolutely beautiful gift that Betsy does. And it gets her into writing up her research and writing. Last bullet point on this particular screen, progressive letter with siblings or cousins or anyone else. Progressive letter doesn't necessarily have to be a postal letter. We know how email threads are. Sometimes those are really aggravating in our work lives, aren't they? An email thread that goes on forever. But what a cool thing it would be, wouldn't it, if an email thread was like a virtual progressive letter, where you would start out with just a paragraph or two, send it to a brother, cousin, and ask them to write about their early school memories or comment on your writing and see how many people will chime in. And then in a fairly short amount of time, you have a lot of story recorded there, a lot of memories. It can be a lot of fun. Different ways of writing. Write a memoir. Put a cookbook together, pulling from recipes of grandparents and aunts and uncles. Yes, there are men that are really good cooks in our family's histories. Put together a calendar of birthdays, anniversaries, and don't just put the name, but put something about the person, even if it's only meant for you. Uncle Fred, always the grumpy one, could never get him to smile. Write, record things. I have memoir in there twice, not exactly sure why, but just writing like we're writing a memoir. And then the last one, really, I should have put that somewhere else because random means it really doesn't fit any of the suggestions I made. You just scribble things on a note card, on a Post-it note, and you just continue gathering these together. One day, you'll pick up a few of them or a lot of them, and you'll just start reading them for the second time or for the fourth time, and you'll see what a story you've actually put together. So let's take a look at just a couple of examples. So I said to write through a photograph album or record through a photograph album. We've all heard what for many is a tired phrase, a picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, it's tired and it's hung around so long because it's true. We know that looking at one picture just evokes so many memories if that's a picture of something that happened in our life. So if a picture is worth 1,000 words, looking at a picture, we should be able to get at least several dozen words out of it that we can write or record. So it's worth 1,000 words because we can look at it and it evokes all these memories, situations, context, if you will. Well, let's leverage that by writing some of those 1,000 words that a picture is worth. So here's a picture of my father-in-law. You wouldn't be able to pick him out, but he's in the back row in the middle. And if I ran across this picture, and he's the only one identified in this picture, there's all kinds of things I could write about. I thought he was born in the coolest place on planet Earth. He was born in Wild Dog Creek, Kentucky. Now, I know every one of you wants to be born there, right? When someone asks you where you're born, Fort Wayne, Memphis, Atlanta, Walla Walla, Washington. Yeah, those are all great. Those are all fine. But I bet you capture the attention of everyone in the conversation. And say, well, I was born in Wild Dog Creek, Kentucky. So my mind goes to, is this what cabins, houses, domiciles look like in Wild Dog Creek, Kentucky? What are the plants growing up there? What are those vines? What's the occasion for this picture? Why is Charlie not looking at the camera? He's looking sort of off to the side, if you will. So use photographs that way. We all know what kind of thoughts and emotions are evoked when we see three generations. Here's a picture of a wedding. The bride, her mother on the left, her grandmother on the right, her mother's mother. I bet every single person on this program today could write at least a few sentences about multi-generational pictures. There's just all kinds of things that we can write. We are so fortunate to have a partnership with VividPix. VividPix is an amazing company and the name of a software where you can scan photographs and it corrects them. But they also have an app associated with it where you can record your voice talking about a photograph and then marry that audio recording to the photograph as metadata. Think about it. And this really excites me because I'm a geek. Think about it. You can be recording your voice, and that image, that electronic image, can be passed along so that your great-grandchildren's great-grandchildren, whom you will never meet, can hear your voice about a family reunion in Mercer Mountain, Georgia, and who was there, and what they did, and the games they played, and who was really happy, and who got upset. I mean, it's a wonderful time that we live in. So there's all kinds of opportunities available to us. Writing around a word. I'm so impressed with this. A genealogist, some of you may know, Paul Milner, shared this with me a number of years ago, like 16 years ago. Wow, time flies. You're having fun, right? And he gave me permission to use it. He and his wife, now deceased Carol, chose the word ritual for this end of the year holiday Christmas letter. It's a beautifully done letter. So here's the definition of ritual. And then they start out with Carol's dad visiting them. And what was the ritual? Something really fancy and something elaborate. They did a beautiful thing. Carol talked about periodically throughout the day making a cup of coffee for her dad. And just that ritual, that basic ritual, she wrote around that ritual and put together a really meaningful holiday letter that touched on various things that they had done that year. How awesome. We can do the same thing. And it's a neat way to put our thoughts, our memories, our recollections, our experiences into writing. And there you have the beginning of writing or recording your story. Within the last 36 hours, in my life, there were a number of tearful opportunities, and I've already written about these. We'll probably go back and write more. So my mother, who's struggling with dementia, and at 88 years of age, she's lived a good, long life. She's really struggling, and so we've had to transition her to a different portion of her current care facility. So she's losing her current room and gaining a new room, and change for many people is really hard. So even though she doesn't recognize me at all anymore, doesn't remember my name, I think she still enjoys my company from the expression on her face. But even before anyone said anything to her, not unusual for people with dementia, she has kind of a spidey sense, and she knew something was happening. Something was going to change, something was going on. And she cried a little bit. And she wanted to know, am I okay? Am I okay? And I told her she was. The nurse on the floor that she had been on came in to talk to me after she transitioned to the other side of the house and thanked me for letting her care for my mother for 4.5 years. So I'm riding around tears. So transition was complete yesterday, late morning. Yesterday evening, we had 2 customers bring from Arizona in a mini U-Haul truck both of their mother's family papers. And we unloaded a pretty full mini U-Haul. And we thanked them for preserving their mother's stories. And they both teared up. One of them cried. They felt good about making sure that mom's stories would continue on. That's how we can take one word, one experience, and we can write around that. And if you're like me and like many other people, when you write around a word, you can come back again and again, maybe an infinite number of times, but at least several times, and you can add to it. This is a favorite phrase of mine. I discovered it a number of years ago, I think just before the pandemic. I like the way this author says this. Sometimes memories leak out of my eyes and roll down my cheeks. When memories leak out of our eyes, write about them. You can use tears as your word to write around as well. The person I mentioned just a few minutes ago, just a remarkable individual, Betsy Gephardt, she's the one who writes annually family histories for her 2 children. So she makes a new one for the oldest child, and the youngest child then gets a copy of the family history that the oldest child received the previous year. Now, while that sounds maybe the way I've articulated a little convoluted, but it's an enticement for her to write up her research, to pick a particular person or family group or family line for a couple generations, find some images, digitize some photographs, and write it up. Now these stories collectively are her family history, Betsy's family history. And there's always more to do. We always find more ancestors and find more story. My father-in-law, when he came out of remission from cancer for the second time, he and his 8 siblings wrote a progressive letter. He started it out. Charlie Young started it out. This is just the first page. They had such a good time mailing this letter around for nearly a year. More than 30 pages of writing about their early memories of, you can see it in the second line there, Wild Dog Creek. And they had to move from there to Farmers Ridge when he was a young child. Try that. Try an email thread. Try writing a progressive communique, whether it's a letter, an email, and share it. Get your siblings involved. Get siblings and cousins. Get all the first cousins involved. You can have a lot of fun with it, and you're writing your history. I mentioned cookbooks. We partner with a number of educational organizations, and one of the great educational places here in Fort Wayne, Wayne New Tech, they like engaging with us and doing kind of out of the box things like have kids do family history, Ancestry Me. So one of the students put together a couple generations of their family history in the form of a recipe book. We can do the same types of things. We can also find our writing hand or put ourselves in the writing frame of mind by listening to others tell their stories. What kinds of things do they talk about, and what do their stories conjure up in our minds? Listening is so important. I was able to write a lot of my children's family stories by listening to them engage with other family members, like their grandparents. So I remember my father-in-law, who wrote the Progressive Letter, he liked to do all kinds of grafting between different apple trees. It was a really hot, muggy August, and he was really, really warm outside, as it tends to be here in the Great Lakes area. And so he took off his shirt, and my third son, Brandon, noticed a scar on Grandpa's shoulder. And so he asked Grandpa, like, what happened there? And that's the first time he had really put together what I'm sure he may have heard earlier in his life, that Grandpa was wounded, got 2 Purple Hearts in World War II. And so Grandpa at break time went up in the attic and got his helmet down. And his helmet didn't look like this. This is free clip art, but it looked kind of like this. And helmet's kind of in the wind right now. I think my brother-in-law has it. But the helmet had a bullet hole clean through it. And I remember Brandon looking at the bullet hole and looking at Grandpa's head and looking at the bullet hole and looking at Grandpa's head. Like, why isn't there a scar on your head? Why are you still here if you had a bullet go through your head? And then Grandpa explained the story to him, which is a little longer than we need or have time for right now. But when we listen to others telling stories, we are being given a gift. We're being given a gift of, hey, this could be part of our story, could be part of our family's histories. Intentionally tell our stories, talk with living family members, close and distant. Use all gatherings to tell about our family stories, not to engage in how we did it. Share the story, not the process, right? So many times we're so prone to blathering on about all the things and trouble we went through to get the picture, the tombstone, rubbing, whatever. It's like, no, just tell the story. Who is it you found, and how do they fit in, and what their life was like? Intentionally tell our stories. And again, as a previous slide said, read. Read will trigger your mind with a whole lot of, hey, what about? What can I springboard from with that? Read to your children, read to your grandchildren. Use the tech that you have, right? Use all the tech. We live in the best of times. Our smart devices are not only great cameras, they're great recorders. You could talk on your way to work into your smart device and see what happens, right? Record your thoughts. Audiobiography, Google it. Not autobiography, but audiobiography. It's a service, right? You can publish books through Hulu, right? Why not publish books through Hulu? Investigate it, see. Tell the story. Tell the story. I'm going to stop my screen share here, and I'm just going to thank all of you again for your time with me today and this month. I really hope that I've given you at least one thought about writing, sharing, doing something active to record or to write your family story. You'll be glad you did. It'll become something that you look forward to. I know some of you might be saying, I'll never look forward to like writing. That's like painful and hard. Take time. Put in your mind, that reminds me of as a writing prompt. Use all of our senses as a writing prompt. And then have fun with it. No one's going to grade you. It's really of great consequence to pass along our family stories. Take care. It was great spending time with you this month. Please do be active in recording and sharing your family stories. Take care.